Hello and welcome to this very special episode of Success Synergy Show. I have a phenomenal guest with me today. She is Miss Sai Sudha Shenoy, a great friend of mine. She is a senior advisor product management at Dell, and we are going to discuss a very interesting topic, which is all about using persona spectrum to design the products and services as big companies use them. And so that's going to translate this information to us so that all of us can benefit with it and utilize the knowledge to target our own consumer needs and design the products that really suit the needs of our own consumers. Welcome to the show, Sudha. It is just wonderful to have you here with us.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you for that introduction.
Well, it is your introduction, and I know there are so many more accomplishments also, which are add ons to your just very brief introduction that I've given here. But I know you to be a very modest person, so I'm not going into all that elaboration. So, again, welcome to the show. This is a very
Thank you.
interesting topic, Sudha. When you brought it up to me, it was like something which doesn't show up that very well on Google searches, or perhaps people don't even know about it, so they don't go about searching for it. But persona spectrum is something that really came to my attention when you brought it to me. And when I started reading up on it, it just kept on opening a world of knowledge, which is really very interesting. So please tell us a little bit what exactly this persona spectrum is all about and how do we benefit from this?
Sure, Nina. So, persona spectrum as a topic has. I'm very passionate about designing hardware, software, or services using the persona spectrum. And the reason why I use persona spectrum is to reach a wider user base. And to give
Okay.
you a brief description about what actually persona spectrum is, it is nothing but you can consider it as a tool that uh, I or other people can use to develop or foster empathy and design products and solution that you can
Hmm.
scale to a large audience.
Right. Okay.
So a
Empathy is something
persona,
very difficult to reach at. I think empathy is a human trait, and putting it out on products and services might be a bit tricky. How do you go about doing it?
yes, it is because when we design a product or a service, we tend to be very biased.
Hmm.
We try to
Hmm.
design solutions or products assuming that the consumers are going to be like us or like me and you.
Yes, yes. That's a common human error. If I like something, I would think that my audience also wants it. But so many times we just are so wrong over here. We just don't do the thinking right. And just because I like something doesn't mean that my consumers are also going to like it. That's a very common human error. Yes.
Yes, so this persona spectrum helps you identify exclusions.
Okay. Okay.
So
You'll
what
have to explain. You'll have to explain this much in greater detail for all of us to understand it.
yes, yes, definitely, Nina. uh, so how it works is you first identify the exclusions,
Mm-hmm.
and
Okay.
then once you have identified those exclusions, you include them as part of your design
Okay.
development.
So there is it a possibility that we can see something on the screen that you can just show us or something, if
Yes,
that's a
there's a
possibility?
visual for persona spectrum that makes it easier for people to understand what I'm talking about. Can you please share the persona spectrum, please?
I think you've already shared it. I'll just bring it up on the screen.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Just let me bring it up on the screen and let me hide this caption here for the time being. Yes.
Mhm. Okay, so this, what you see on the screen now is nothing but the persona spectrum, where
Okay.
we have identified
Can
the
you make it full screen,
exclusions.
Sudha? Sorry for the interruption. Can you make it full screen?
Full screen.
Or you can do.
Um, okay,
Is it?
is this better?
Okay, fine. It's fine with me.
Okay.
It's fine with me. Yes. Please explain.
So using the persona spectrum, you can see that we have identified different exclusions.
Okay.
So exclusions are nothing but disabilities or limitations
Right. Okay.
between human interactions with a thing or a software or a hardware.
Okay.
So you have different touch points like touch, speech, vision, listening. So these are the
Hmm.
different touch points using which you experience a particular product or service.
Right. The
And these
sensory, the human sensory organs, I would say, right?
yes, yes.
Hmm. Okay.
And then you have different exclusions which are categorized as permanent, temporary, and situational.
Okay. All right. Okay.
And
Okay.
permanent is permanent disability is something like 100% loss of vision,
Hmm.
or it could be deafness, or it could be
Hmm.
100% loss of speech or hearing. And temporary, again, as the name suggests, it's a temporary situation. For example, you have, say, your one of your limbs in a cast.
All right.
So
Okay.
here you are limited to the tasks that you can perform
Hmm. Right.
with one of your limbs in a cast.
Okay.
And when it comes to sight, an eye infection is again a temporary situation. And
Right.
sometimes you may have a ear infection because of which you cannot hear things very clearly.
Hmm.
And what all these temporary and situational cases do is they they don't allow you to do a certain task without interruptions.
Right. Right.
And
Hmm.
sometimes it even affects your ability to perform work.
Right.
And
It would definitely affect the ability to use certain devices, if it's a temporary
yes,
thing or if it's a permanent situation. Yes. Hmm.
yes.
I just.
And we have a lot of products and services today that cater to the permanent disability segment.
Hmm.
And some of these products don't cater to the temporary and situational use cases. So we try to use the persona spectrum to address their needs and their pain points. And speech is another interesting case, especially the situational case in speech.
Hmm.
Say I am talking to a person, and that person cannot understand my accent.
Accent. Yes.
Yes,
That's a common cross-cultural situation we come across everywhere. The people who are working in cross-cultural environments, they always come across this situation. And you ask the
yes,
person to
and
repeat the words, and then it doesn't go smoothly. I mean, there's a break in communication many times, if the person is trying to repeat something
right.
which they have already said. Hmm.
Yes. So
Okay.
when you look at this at the workplace,
Hmm.
uh, it is actually a lot of distraction, and there's a there's loss of information,
Hmm.
there's distraction, and the productivity also decreases because
Definitely.
you're not understanding what the other person is telling you, or the other person cannot understand what you're speaking.
Right. Right.
So these are all moments of disabilities in our daily lives.
Mhm. Right.
So we consider all these use cases and we try to build products or services that cater to the temporary and situational disabilities.
Right. Okay. Okay. So,
And another case, for hearing is, say you're in a meeting, in a Zoom meeting, and sometimes because of broadband issues, there's a 2 or 3 second lag.
yes, yes. Hmm.
Yes. So what happens is sometimes everybody's speaking at the same time, and again you're not following the conversation, you're confused. So that's also a moment of disability in our
Hmm.
daily life.
Hmm. So basically, it's all about breakages in communication, whether it is communication to your own self or to the
Yes.
communication with other people. Because I
Yes.
feel everything is all about communication, whether you're using a device or you're using
Yep.
any other service, it's all about communication. To
Yes,
me, in my mind,
communication and loss of productivity as well, Nina.
yes, when communication is not there, productivity loss is definitely going to be there. It's
Right.
it's it's an it's an either or kind of a situation. Right? It's
Yes,
one
because they
of the
have
things to do.
very successfully caused distraction.
Hmm. Yes,
And because of this distraction, your productivity has reduced to some extent.
right, right.
And
So
this
how
tends to
do
be
companies?
quite costly at the workplace,
Hmm.
because people are less productive, and you actually waste a lot of time when there are interruptions like these at the workplace.
Right,
That's why it's important to consider these use cases when you're designing a service that is suited to work in the workplace or outside.
right. So tell me, Sudha, how do you go about uh, translating this into actual live examples? Can you just explain this with some live examples? I think that would be making the whole situation very clear to us.
Sure, Nina. So one of the examples that I always quote is about the closed captioning
Yes.
functionality that we have.
Hmm.
So initially, this was developed for people who couldn't hear, people with
Right.
hearing disability. But today, everybody benefits from closed captioning.
Yes.
In a
Yes.
place like a railway station where it's a always so noisy, you
Hmm.
can just look at a screen, read, and understand.
Yes.
Or if
Yes.
you're watching, say, a movie in another language that you don't understand, you can follow the closed captioning
Yes.
feature that
Yes.
is available in all the streaming products these days.
Yes, and I see it on social media also. Like there are so many videos which are just put on the social media, and you can't go about watching each and every one of them to find what is interesting to you. So you just scroll through, and if you find a caption which is eye-catching, then you go and watch that particular video. That's why most of the social media sites they have the videos playing in mute, and only when you
Yeah.
open the mute when the videos start playing, or if you hold the screen for a moment, then only it starts playing, right?
Yes. Yes.
Mm.
So what enterprises have done here is they have solved a problem for one section
Hmm.
of users, and they have extended the solution to cover a broad audience.
Okay.
And
Okay.
this is exactly how the persona spectrum or the inclusion works.
Hmm.
So you solve for one and you extend that to many.
Okay. So as I understand it, it's all about first of all finding that little exclusion, and then once you find the
Even
solution for
before
that
you
particular
find,
exclusion,
even before you identify the exclusion, Nina, it's important to be empathetic.
yes, yes,
So only when you're empathetic, you can find these exclusions.
correct, 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 correct. Empathy is something which will always make a person more susceptible to seeing the differentiating points, the things which make a person unique.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, a person who's just looking in a broad uh, perspective will never find that little nuance which will probably make a person stand out. That's how you read the exclusivity. You
Yes.
are calling it exclusion. I love to call it exclusivity because that's what differentiation is all about. You are using the word disability. I would see uniqueness in it, but that's just the perception point I'm taking over here.
And again, the definition of disability has evolved over the years.
Hmm.
So 2 or 3 decades back, uh, disability was associated with a physical condition.
Right. Right.
But today, the definition has changed from being a physical condition to being a mismatched interaction between a person and a system.
Yes.
And
Yes.
nothing explains that more beautifully than the persona spectrum.
Hmm. Please elaborate with some example. That would make it more interesting.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, before this COVID thing happened, I think sometime last year, I had been to an optician, an optical store, to look for spectacle frames. And I was also looking at some of the shades there. Some of them had really nice colors, pink and yellow. So I was looking at that shades, and one of them walked up to me and said, Take a look at this."
Mhm.
And uh, try to select one of these designs. They look good on you and all that. And again here, I thought this was a little. I was a little amused because I wear spectacles, which means I cannot wear shades, because if I remove my spectacles, I cannot see.
Right. I understand where you are.
So
Okay.
I started thinking about how this salesperson could have been more empathetic.
Yes.
He
Hmm.
could have shown me some products, like frames where you could use colored glasses with power,
Hmm.
which would have made more sense.
Hmm.
Because here the person was trying to sell me something that is useless to me.
Absolutely of no use. Yes. Hmm.
So it's important to be empathetic. That is what
Right.
I'm trying to stress
No, I
here.
understand. I understand. If you understand one consumer, you can't just think of extending everything that you know about that consumer everywhere. Earlier
Yes.
in sales, it used to be the generic thought that you actually make the persona of a person, an imaginary customer who would have all kinds of objections, and then start substituting those objections, or rather superimposing those objections onto the other people also. So sometimes you find salespeople doing a dialogue kind of thing on their own. They're giving you a
Hmm.
question also, they're giving you an answer also, and you're sitting over there listening and going, what the hell is this person talking about? You know, those kind of mindsets with which sales used to be done, but that was long time back, and many sales trainers even now propose that kind of an approach. But I feel after this pandemic, the world has changed completely. Today,
Yes.
too much of marketing or too much of selling of the wrong kind, even if you're getting desperate for sales, is not going to happen. It's not going to
Hmm.
make the whole solution happen. So, understanding one consumer is not going to make it applicable everywhere, but understanding that exclusivity will probably make you reach a solution which you can then apply to a larger audience of consumers.
Yes.
Am I understanding it correctly?
Yes. And if you look at the temporary and situational, that's something that happens to everybody in their daily
Hmm.
lives, Nina.
Right. Hmm.
You have so many distractions throughout the day, and yes, it's important to recognize exclusivity. by being empathetic.
True. Very true. Very true. I'm just putting the caption again on the screen because, again, if the video plays in mute, which it will on the social media, we are going live on different social media channels. We need to have the caption over there. We are talking about this. You can't remove the caption from there. Okay. So, Sudha, just elaborate a little bit more on this as to how do we go about understanding this exclusivity?
Okay, so uh, when you're designing, but these are not niche use cases, Nina. So as I explained, this is something that can happen to you or to me any day, anytime. So first, what we do or what I do is by talking to people. So I do a lot of user interviews.
Okay.
So I know what the person does or what his or her interactions are with different objects or software or hardware. So through these user interviews I get a lot of important information, using which I then map it with this persona spectrum. Like for example, I was talking to somebody who is a salesperson and uses a mobile device very often. And I remember this person telling me that he gets very irritated when there are call drops.
Right.
And that's something that we cannot avoid, because irrespective of the service provider or the network that you're using, there could be cases where you're out of
Network area.
the
Yes.
network coverage area and you will have a call drop.
Right.
But this was one of the major pain points to this salesperson who is always traveling.
Right.
um, so there may be cases where I cannot give a solution.
Yeah, because it is not in your hands. It is outside of your
Yes.
area of control. Right.
Yes. So in these cases, what we do is we contact our vendors or the service providers and tell them that this percentage of our sales people have this issue. And then they prioritize, and then it's their job. They might put up a tower in that low
Right.
coverage area place. So that is one. And if it is something to do with our internal products that we have manufactured, or uh, something that we control, then we try to find a solution.
Right. Right. Can you
And
give a live
these
example that will make it very clear? Just give a live example for this. Some internal solution that you may have come up with because of.
I cannot give you a
Okay.
live example, but I will give you an example. Say I have injured my my right hand, and it's very cold. It's winter, so I have to wear something to keep myself warm.
Right.
And I cannot use a pullover because I have injured my arm, and it's very difficult for me to wear the pullover. I cannot lift my hand, so that's very difficult. So in that case, what kind of warm clothing would suit me? It's definitely something like a sweater with buttons, which
Right.
I can
Okay.
easily
Okay.
wear and remove. So it's all about good design and
Right.
how you
Right.
use this design to solve a problem.
Right. 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 Understood. Yeah, I got your point. I got your point.
Yes.
Yeah.
So again, in this example, it's very important to understand the use case or the problem in detail. And if you apply, sales concepts, you can definitely cannot sell a pullover to a person with an injured arm.
Right.
because it would be difficult for him to wear. So be
Yes.
empathetic, show him designs which he can wear easily. So again, I'm reiterating the same thing, Nina. Be empathetic and recognize exclusions.
Definitely. No, it's, see, I personally feel so that however number of times it can be repeated, it makes better sense than anything else. Like, these days, I'll tell you my own personal experience. I have unsubscribed from so many email lists because there was so much of forceful marketing happening.
Mhm.
These are not the times where you can actually get desperate and do forceful marketing, because there's not much money in the market, number one. And second thing is, this is a time of empathy. When you're shooting an email, perhaps the other person may be not in a position or situation to understand the content of the mail, no matter how good the content may be, no matter how valuable the content may be. So, kind of, there's a little bit of switching off inside of people. This is what I'm noticing. Uh, just because the situations are such, everybody is a little
Yes.
haggard because of the additional work and no reasonable result in sight, which is
Mhm.
a little frustrating for everyone. So it's like a mental switching off that is happening. It's happening with me, so I feel it would be happening to a lot more other people also. I don't know, I don't have the technical terminology for this, but there is a switch off where I may have enjoyed those meals earlier, but now when thrice a week the frequency is increasing or the repetition is increasing, it's irritating me, and it is making me go mentally switched off from that particular person. I'm not saying or suggesting that email marketing is not working or perhaps it will not work later. But right at this very minute, I feel too much of forceful marketing is not an empathetic way to move forward. It's good to create content, but
Mhm.
let's be careful about too much of force in our content for selling anything. Today, the content is all about providing more information, which is
Yes.
a value add. This is what I personally feel. I mean, I don't know if I'm making any sense over here, because you are at a very senior position. But this mental switch off, what exactly is happening there? I'm just kind of talking out loud, thinking
Okay,
out loud.
so extending the persona spectrum, we have something called intellectual disability, Nina.
Oh,
So
you
I
have
will
a term
cover,
for it? You have
yes,
a
there's
term for
something
it?
called, yes, it's called intellectual disability. Again, there are three cases here: permanent, temporary, and situational.
Okay.
Permanent is something where the damage is irreversible. It could be a genetic condition, or it could be, an irreversible damage because of
Okay.
some accident.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's permanent. And then you have temporary, which could be effect of, some medication, or, drug abuse. So what happens in these cases is it affects your ability to process information,
Okay.
what you hear, what you read. So when you're going through, either temporary or situational, it affects your ability to interpret and process this information. And
Okay.
situational can be, stress. Stress can be one of the examples for situational. uh, so in these cases, it's important how you structure your information or your content,
Mm-hmm.
because
Right.
definitely when you're stressed and you're reading something, you may not understand it completely.
Right. So the example that I gave about email marketing, will this fall in this intellectual
it
disability?
it may or it may not,
Okay.
because when you're trying to solve a particular problem, first thing is, first thing, what is important is the technology that you use.
Mhm.
And again, technology in itself is not the solution. Technology is just an enabler.
Yes, it's an enabler. Yes.
Yes. So the technology that you use is important. And then the other attributes are creativity. How creatively, you uh, present this information to your audience.
Empathy is
And
definitely there. Important.
empathy is always there.
Empathy
It
is
has to
always
be there every week. And then the third thing is the value that it brings.
there. Right. Right.
So if there's no value, I mean, there is no value, and it does not make sense
Hmm.
if it does not bring any value to me.
Right. So, Sudha, can I just remove this from the stream and then we'll talk for a little while longer? I'll ask you a few more
Sure.
questions. Is that all
Okay,
right?
sure. Yes, Nina.
Actually, the images become so small when there's a projection on the screen that I can't see your face very clearly, and it's such a pretty face that you could I need to talk to you one on one on a very humane level. See, oh, as I summate whatever you have told us, there's a in the study of persona spectrum or human personas, as I understand it more interestingly, there are three situations. One is a permanent disability situation, one is a temporary thing, and the third one is a situational thing.
Yes.
And it happens all across the sensory organs.
Right.
And then there is a additional thing which is like a perfectly capable individual
Mhm.
who just voluntarily or involuntarily switches off the mind or the brain,
Yes.
which is a intellectual disability kind of a situation, which again may be, of course, it can be permanent, which is unfortunate.
Mhm.
But the temporary and situational is more like under control and can be done in a voluntary manner, right?
Yes, but then we are not trying to control situational and temporary through products and services.
Yes, fine. But isn't this what most of the people are doing? And when they are stressed out, they go and watch a movie
Mhm.
on their iPad. We are turning to devices to control stress. Perhaps
Yes.
it works, perhaps it doesn't. Perhaps it will create some other problem in the system, like losing your eyesight or something, or loss
Uh,
of eyesight a little bit.
yes, the side effects can be anything, Nina,
Hmm. Okay.
that result of out of these use cases. But here, I'm not trying to focus on what the side effects could be.
Hmm.
So my focus is here to provide a solution.
Right. I get your
So
point. I get your
yeah,
point.
yeah, and and in the process of proposing a solution, I'm also understanding the persona a little better.
Right. Right.
So what happens is the more you understand the persona, you clearly know what your solution can be,
Yes.
and
Fine.
you can iterate on that solution.
Hmm. I got your point. See, you
That is the
are
objective.
talking that's the objective, and see, our thinking over here is slightly different, as maybe the viewers may be thinking as what we are talking about, and I'll just empathize with it. Correct me if I'm wrong over here, please. Please be sure to correct me, because I'm also trying to just understand this whole thing better so that we can find more interesting applications in the real life. You are talking from the standpoint of being a senior advisor for project management at a very big company, worldwide big company.
Mhm.
So you're talking from that perspective. And as you are translating the information to me, I'm interpreting it in my mind from the angle of small business owners or solopreneurs, which are my targeted area of uh, audience with which I work all the time. So, as
Okay.
you are talking about solutions, I'm also thinking about solutions, but the applicability of the same information is getting translated in a slightly different manner over here in my mind. So,
Okay.
you see
I
the
will give you an
difference?
example. I'll give you another
All
example,
right,
Nina.
great, great.
So say you're doing an email campaign for
Hmm,
something. So you send emails to your target audience,
hmm,
your prospects, and when the prospect opens this email, say he had a bad day at work or he's stressed, and he reads this email, what is in it for him?
hmm, hmm,
That is one. How does it
hmm,
benefit him?
hmm.
And the second thing is the tone of the email. Is it
Yes,
easy for a stressed person to understand and appreciate?
right.
See, at the end of the day, it's all give and take. What can I benefit from this
Hmm,
particular service or product or email?
right,
That is what I look for as an end user.
right, right,
So the content of the email is important. It
right.
cannot be in a language that a person finds difficult to understand or comprehend or interpret.
Hmm,
And I also mentioned a while ago that when you are stressed or in temporary or situational disability mode, intellectual disability mode, it affects your processing, information processing capability.
yes, yes.
So what I hear and what I see at that moment is important.
Hmm,
So keeping that in mind, probably the marketeer or the person who has drafted that email can use a language that is simple for anybody to understand. And it's
right.
also it's an email campaign, so it has to elaborate on the benefits
Hmm,
or what is in it for me
right,
kind
right,
of scenario.
right,
So you have
right.
to be empathetic whatever you do,
Hmm,
because
okay,
you don't know what your end user is thinking or what his state of mind is when he's reading your email.
right, right,
It
right.
may not
I
be a happy person always who's reading your
no, no,
email.
not at all. Not at all. Especially in the present day situations, um, it can be going wrong. So actually, you and I are talking about the same thing. It's all about empathy. But see,
Yes.
let me pose one question to you. Suppose there's a person who is designing, let's say, a SaaS based product.
Mhm. Okay.
How would they start applying this persona spectrum information to that? Because these days I feel a lot of people are designing SaaS based products for
Yes. So the starting point is user interviews, Nina.
okay.
So you speak to users, and you don't ask them questions like, how an application should be, what
Hmm.
features should it have.
Hmm.
That is not how I would do a user interview.
Hmm.
I would ask, questions like, what does your typical day look like? What do you do?
Hmm.
You know,
Okay.
it's you are trying to understand the person.
Understand a person better. You can't just
Yes,
find solutions straight away. It's not really a
yes,
possibility. Yes.
right. So I try to understand the persona or the user in greater
Hmm.
detail. And
Hmm.
once I have this information, then finding the solution becomes a little easier,
Right. 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 And
because not everybody I talk to is a very technical person.
no.
They may not even know what SaaS-based application means.
Exactly.
Yes, so we try to understand, or I try to understand the person and not their understanding of technology while designing something.
Right. Right. And what about educational products? The same principle applies there also.
It applies anywhere,
Everywhere.
any segment, any section. Yeah. And
This is why
I
we
personally
say
haven't designed any educational products, but it is the same everywhere.
it's the same everywhere. See, it's not about just designing an educational product personally per se for you. What I'm saying is that if you have kind of streamlined any process at, let's say, in your company, that
Hmm.
too is a kind of educational product only. For me, everything is education.
Okay.
See, education is not just about academic education or about business education or anything. It's we are getting educated every moment.
Hmm.
Suppose there's a process which may have been very complicated, and you may have designed a better process to make all that complication get streamlined so that people can actually use it properly. Isn't that education? I think it's all rolled into one. It's an empathetic way to look at things, isn't it?
Right. So a typical process would be collecting user or persona data through interviews, and then you try to prototype your ideas or your solution. See, it's a typical, you know, iterate, try, test cycle.
Yes, and then
That's how
go through
you
the cycle all
improve.
over again. Yes,
Yes.
go through the cycle all over again many number of times.
Right.
Yes, yes. So yeah, I get your point, and it's very interesting information, especially the bit about intellectual disability.
Hmm.
I wanted to create one short video on why so much of repetition is necessary. People think that small children only need repetition in order to make them learn anything. I've seen adults go switched off. I can myself go switched off completely. And if somebody is talking to me and I just don't hear it at all because I'm engrossed either in something or I may just not be listening at all.
Hmm.
So, that intellectual disability part is really very amusing for me. It's amusing in the sense it's very educational. And of course it's amusing to see how we can apply that into the educational products. So I'll make sure I get that video out quickly. It's all about
Hmm.
repetition, and I have created a graphic through which I will explain why repetition is needed, even in adult education. So,
Okay. Yeah, I was speaking to you, I could think of another example, Nina. So
uh-huh.
a few years ago, I had to prepare a document for one of the software products that I had designed.
Mhm.
So what happened was I rely a lot on user interview data.
Okay.
So I identified a few people and I started having interviews with them to gather more information. So basically, there were three kinds of people. One is that group which wanted a document for everything,
Okay. All right. Okay.
and the second group was people who are like 50%. They may use or they may not,
Mhm. Hmm.
and the third one is those group of people who said, I don't need documents, I can figure it myself.
Right. Right.
So these are the three patterns I could identify at the end of the user interview.
Mhm.
And normally the ones who said we need a document end to end for everything were usually the baby boomers, people
Yes.
in their 50s, 60s, 70s.
They're still
They were
collecting
the one.
documents. Hmm.
Yes, so you can find different attributes. You can find groups of behaviors when you do this user research or user interviews.
Hmm.
And based on that, you can, make a lot of decisions.
Right.
And that is how your product gets shaped.
Right. Right. I get your point. It's very interesting. Very, very interesting. We talk about engagements all the time.
Hmm.
And you can't bore a person to death and expect the person to be engaged at the same time.
Yes.
Engagement is really very important. And once you know the person you're talking to and can empathize with the person,
Hmm.
then the whole process of designing a product would become easier. I think most of the people, many people, I'd say, not just most, let's not be generalistic, and this is still a generalistic information. I've seen many people that talking at other people, it's like always a commanding kind of a situation. It's never empathetic as to what the other person may be even thinking.
Hmm.
And that creates a lot of disruptions. Even if it is an online educational program, let's say, it's all about one way traffic, one way communication. And there are breakdowns. It's giving me an idea to create one live stream on different kinds of personality types, something which I use a lot in my, not just in my sales educational programs, but otherwise also while meeting somebody.
Hmm.
Within the first 2 minutes, I try to understand the other person's personality, and it's not about judging another person, because it's all about understanding yourself also. Unless you understand yourself, you will not be able to communicate that much properly with the other person. So, as you were talking about user personas, I'm also thinking about personalities, because persona spectrum would definitely reflect the personality type of the person. Maybe this is unrelated information, but I can link up that video once
Okay.
I create it with this, and then probably it will start making better sense to all the people who are in the process of designing their own products right now.
Hmm.
Because after this pandemic is over, having a lot of products is definitely good. And this is the time to actually go about making those tweaks,
Yes.
adjustments, and creating good content, whether it is good content related with your educational program, or creating a device, or creating a SaaS-based solution, or whatever it may be. That content will help you in creating your product and services so that they can help a lot of other people. And you can actually go about selling them. Unless it is a
Yes.
sales worthy product, it will not be sold. The
Right.
end result of every product and services to have it reach as many customer hands as is humanly possible. That's everybody's dream also. So I think I'll try and link a couple of videos to this one. So probably the whole thing will become more interesting and more understandable to everybody. Would you like to
Yes.
add something to this, Sudha? And we've been talking for almost 50 minutes now. So with this kind of an engagement, I did not even realize the time. So we are at the top of the hour. So would you like to add something more to whatever we have discussed up until now?
Yes, and speaking about the audience or the users,
Hmm.
and understanding their needs, requirements, behaviors, it's a very complex topic for me, Nina,
Yes,
because you can do so many permutations and combinations
absolutely.
with what data I get from users.
Hmm.
See,
Hmm.
I can group them into generations. I can group them by geographies, and
Oh,
each
yes.
geography has displays a different behavior.
Hmm. Hmm.
A
Right.
group of people from Europe have different, behaviors and requirements in comparison with, a group of people from Asia.
Hmm. Definitely. Definitely.
There are a lot of interesting, trends that you can,
Hmm. Right.
establish, a lot of behaviors, And there are a lot of things that you can, group. And your or my decisions will be based on what I observe in all these patterns or trends, based on, geographies, based on, whether um, they are in their 20s, 30s, or 50s. And then yeah, I mentioned geographies, and it also, depends on a lot of other attributes. So it's not easy. Designing is not an easy job.
Not at all. Not at all.
Yes. And especially when behaviors are involved, it makes it more complex,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
because a thing that one person likes, another person may not like. So you have to build products that cut across all these attributes. And then you try to personalize and customize them as per your requirements.
Right. Yes.
That's
And
why personalization and customization is such a huge hit these days.
it is. It is. It is definitely. It is definitely. Because you can't possibly customize everything for suiting everybody's needs. So maybe some
Yes.
customization can be given at the uh, end users level also for them to customize the whole thing as per their requirements. Some options
Yep.
of self customization can be given to them.
Yes.
Variations are definitely there, definitely going to be there.
Yes. So what we do in enterprises is we create something called a base product, which which we build based on all this data that we have gathered.
Right.
And what happens to this base product is all, customization and personalization
Right.
to suit a particular business requirement.
Right. It's extremely interesting. Extremely interesting bit of information for everybody, I think. Again, you are thinking from a big company's standpoint, and I'm thinking from a small business owner's standpoint. That perception difference is there. But every business in the world, every product and service can benefit from this information if they empathize with the end user
Yes,
and customer.
correct.
And the requirements of the market will definitely be thrown in, and the requirements of the end users will definitely be the governing factor in the entire process. Thank you so much, Sudha, for giving us such enlightening information.
Thank you, Nina.
When you first approached this with me, it was absolutely a different kind of thing for me. I had not really thought about this. This for being an empathetic person myself, I can empathize very quickly with people. But that has been the trend with me. I don't expect this from other people, but so it kind of came easy to me. But when you're going on a larger scale, as I am now, launching my own marketplaces, this information is definitely helpful, very helpful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here,
Thank you.
Sudha.
My
And
pleasure.
thank you very much. And thank you for the audience who's been with us. And we'll see you around soon.